Is there a better way of winding down the work week than talking about tabletop role-playing games? Because if so, I can't think of what it is. Welcome to Eviliv3, a celebration of my favorite tabletop role-playing games. This is a sister channel to Eviliv. Subscribe if you're new to the channel because today we are diving deep into the tabletop role-playing game news with this episode covering the Balders Gate HBO series, Forgotten Realms Humble Bundle, top horror tabletop role-playing games, and the All's Fair tabletop role-playing game. Now, I would like to take a moment and thank the Patreon patrons and invite you to consider becoming a patron. You can even grab tabletop role-playing games and get $10 off by signing up to startplaying.games using my affiliate links in the description below. Okay, so let's get into this, shall we? First and foremost, Balders Gate TV series continuing game's story in works at HBO from The Last of Us co-creator Craig Mazin and Hasbro Entertainment. Now, before I go into this article, I do want to say I really enjoyed The Last of Us TV series, both seasons. I only started playing The Last of Us video game season, is it called season 1 or episode 1 or just Last of Us? Anyway, the first one after I watched the first season of the Last of Us TV series on HBO. And I never really finished it, but I got really close, I think, to the end. And I really enjoyed it. But I got to say, I really, really enjoyed it. I'm a sucker for sort of post-apocalyptic worlds. And The Last of Us world is a really great one. And so I thought, they stuck so close to the original that I should check out the game and see what it's like. And then, of course, season 2 came out. And I enjoyed it too. So I don't know how faithful it is or not, but I dug it. And I'm looking forward, if they ever get around to a season 3, to watching that. So that being said, I actually have faith in Craig Mazin in order to faithfully adapt, as far as I understand, a series to a show, like a video game to a streaming series. So Balders Gate, the TV series, I kind of have faith in until I see that Hasbro Entertainment is involved. And they've shit the bed more than, I think, anyone in doing anything. They're just terrible. So let's get in the article and we'll see whether or not this has any legs. Craig Mazin, co-creator of arguably the most acclaimed TV adaptation of a video game to date, HBO's The Last of Us, will be taking on another hugely popular and acclaimed game title, Larian Studios' Balders Gate 3, which is set in the world of Dungeons & Dragons. HBO is developing Balders Gate, a drama series based on Wizards of the Coast's video game franchise, with Mazin attached to create, write, executive produce, and showrun the TV adaptation. Also executive producing are Jacqueline Lesko, Cecil O'Connor, and Hasbro Entertainment's Gabriel Morano. Chris Perkins, the former longtime head of story at Hasbro subsidiary Wizard of the Coast, which is behind the D&D game universe, will serve as consultant. Yeah. Unlike HBO's The Last of Us, which retold the story from the PlayStation games, the Balders Gate TV series will be a continuation to the games, telling a story that takes place immediately after the events of Balders Gate 3, as the characters, old and new, are dealing with the ramifications of the events in the third game. I gotta tell you, I would actually prefer Craig Mazin to do a Dragonlance adaptation over Joe Manganiello messing with it. And I would actually trust him to be infinitely more faithful to the original source material, the Chronicles, than anyone else, including the original authors. So I would really prefer they do that rather than going into this Balders Gate. It's not even a video game adaptation. It's what happens next. It's a sequel to the adaptation. I'm sorry, it's a sequel to the video game in a series form. And it's Forgotten Realms. And if we have learned anything, Forgotten Realms is forgettable. It is just not interesting. It is the de facto blanket vanilla setting for Dungeons & Dragons, which used to be prime material, meaning anything you want. and then it was Greyhawk, or maybe that's even vice versa, and then it was Dragonlance, and then it was Forgotten Realms. And they've just stuck with Forgotten Realms for some reason, and I literally have no idea why, because it is the least interesting of anything. It's just, you can do whatever you want. Yeah, okay. Well, how is that different? How is that special? How is that shown on screen as anything of significance? Because I haven't seen it. I haven't seen anything from the supplements that are being promoted that it is anything specific or exciting. I really don't know what the standout point of Forgotten Realms is, other than the video game mechanics made it entertaining for people to play. And that does not make a good series. That just means it was a good video game. So how are you going to differentiate this from the Honor Among Thieves movie or any of the past horrible Dungeons and Dragons movies that were released and make it successful? I have no idea. I hope he does. I just wish it was in a different setting. Hey, Corey, how you doing, man? So, like with The Last of Us, Mason's passion for Balders Gate 3 and its characters and story led to his desire to adapt it as a TV series. He's proudly completed the Sven Vic developed game on the Challenge Honor mode, and he's also a longtime Dungeons & Dragons fan, a dungeon master who's been playing the game weekly for the past 15 years, including tonight. Quote, after putting nearly 1,000 hours into the incredible world of Balders Gate 3, it is a dream come true to be able to continue the story that Larian and the Wizards of the Coast created. Mason said, I'm a devoted fan of Dungeons & Dragons and the brilliant way that Winky and his gifted team adapted it. I can't wait to help bring Balders Gate and all of the incredible characters to life with it as much respect and love as we can. And I'm deeply grateful to Gabe Morano and his team at Hasbro for entrusting me with this incredibly important property. With no ties to another Baldur's Gate game in development, Mason has his freedom over the direction of the story, making it more of a traditional show versus The Last of Us, whose plot and lifespan were determined by the existing games. As Deadline has reported, the post-apocalyptic drama is expected to end with its upcoming third season. Baldur's Gate slated to be Mason's follow-up series for HBO, where he also created and executive produced the Emmy-winning Chernobyl. I have yet to see that. I've heard it's great, but I had no idea. Baldur's Gate is designed to be ongoing and continue with different kinds of stories within the sprawling world of the game. The series draws deeply from the source material of Baldur's Gate 3, how it begins, how the game ends, and not so much from the first two games, which are not official source material. Still, there are some commonalities among those games that are connected to Dungeons & Dragons lore, which Mason's plans to draw upon under the agreement with Wizards of the Coast. The TV series will feature both existing characters from Baldur's Gate 3 and new ones. It is expected to keep the Dungeons & Dragons tradition of taking new characters who are not that powerful and follow their journey through adventures that can make them powerful. The new protagonists are bound to run into beloved characters from Baldur's Gate 3, some of them heroes, some of them villains, some of them literally devils who occupy the same world. He's probably talking about the Tiefling. Now incredibly powerful, they will be meddling, helping, or hindering the new heroes. Mason, who is just now starting his own journey with the material as his deal just closed, plans to reach out to voice cast members of Baldur's Gate 3 with ideas for them to participate in the TV adaptation, if possible. He and The Last of Us co-creator Neil Druckmann did it on their HBO series with several actors from that game, most notably Merle Dandridge, who reprises her role as Marlene. Mason, who has an overall deal with HBO, is now in final prep on Season 3 of The Last of Us. All right, so I'm glad they're doing Last of Us Season 3. We're thrilled to continue our partnership with Craig Mazin on Baldur's Gate, Francesca Orsi, EVP, head of HBO drama programming, said. His deep and long-standing passion for the source material, paired with his remarkable talent for building immersive worlds filled with rich, compelling characters, promises groundbreaking results. HBO's Baldur's Gate is designed to coexist alongside the Forgotten Realms live-action Dungeons & Dragons series Hasbro Entertainment has set up as a Netflix with Sean Levy producing. Yeah, you mean the one that Sean Levy hasn't even started working on yet? The two share D&D's The Forgotten Realms' campaign setting, which is vast and could accommodate multiple TV series. The fans have been eagerly awaiting an adaptation of Balders Gate, and we could not ask for better partners than HBO and the incomparable Craig Mazin to build this world with, Gabriel Morano, head of television, Hasbro Entertainment, said. Hasbro Entertainment also has the Power Rangers live-action series in the works at Disney+. Who cares? Part of the Dungeons & Dragons franchise, the Balders Gate character-driven role-playing video game series originated in 1998 and became known for its mature setting of crime, political intrigue, and edgy adventure. The most recent game, Balders Gate 3, launched to massive critical and commercial success with over 15 million lifetime players, over 34 industry award wins, and made history as the first game to win all 5 major Game of the Year awards. That's awesome. Now, again, don't think they should be doing Baldur's Gate or Forgotten Realms. They need to do something that actually is different so people realize Dungeons and Dragons isn't all the same, that there are different worlds in it, not just Forgotten Realms milquetoast. Hey, Chris, how you doing, man? I heard Chernobyl was great. I just never seen it yet. I really got to sit down and watch it. And I like the actors in it too. And I like the showrunner, so I don't know. I haven't done it. I am not excited for this series. I will probably watch it because I've watched other things that he's done, namely The Last of Us, and I enjoyed that thoroughly. Just because it's Dungeons & Dragons, I'll probably check it out because I'm a fan. But I really wish they would just move on from Forgotten Realms. You have so many great IPs. Look, and if you don't want to do Dragonlance, I get it. I do get it. They had a cartoon that didn't really perform well at all, and so people just don't really want to move forward with, non-performing entities. But Honor Among Thieves didn't perform very well in the box office, and it was still loved by people who actually saw it, and they're still moving forward with Forgotten Realms. So it's clearly not a box office issue when they're like all of the other Dungeons & Dragons movies, I think were set in Forgotten Realms too. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong. But you've got, perfect example there, Corey. You've got Ravenloft that you could tell amazing stories in. Guillermo del Toro would be an amazing Ravenloft TV series showrunner. I think he would do a great job with monsters and gothic horror. He already did the Frankenstein Netflix series, and that was pretty good. So I would love to see him take over Count Strahd von Zarovich and see what he can do with that. But you've also got Dark Sun, and you've got Dragonlance, and you've got some of the newer ones like Eberron. You just have, they're all so very different. You've got so much, you're spoiled for choice, and you always go back to the boring ass setting every single time. I just don't get it. It sucks because you can make a character as interesting as you want and as engaging and enticing as you want. But if the world they're in is not interesting, then the show is not interesting. It's just that simple. I hope he spins it. I hope he does something to make it really engaging and nail-biting and stuff. But look, when we have series like House of the Dragon and A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms fulfilling that sort of fantasy medieval, that medieval fantasy sort of itch, you've got to really knock it out of the park to steal their thunder or even step up. And even the Critical Role cartoon series, those are really good. You've got to do amazing to stand up to those. And I just don't know if Forgotten Realms has what it takes to really stand par to par with Game of Thrones or even Critical Role. You've been reading a lot on Eberron, loving the realm for what you've learned. Yeah, I've heard it's great. It's just another one of those I've never really looked into. It's got, the whole film noir sort of vibe mixed with steampunk, and that's all pretty cool. So I don't know. I'm sure it's good. So let me know what you think. Are you excited for Craig Mazin to be working with Hasbro to be putting out Baldur's Gate TV series sequel to Baldur's Gate season 3 or set? What is that? Just 3? It's just 3. Let me know in the comments. And again, if you would rather see a different IP than Forgotten Realms leveraged, let us know. Because, again, I don't think it was Forgotten Realms, which was the reason Balders Gate 3 was a huge success. I think it was the game mechanics and presentation of the game that made it a huge success. You could literally set it anywhere, and those same game mechanics and the same presentation would be as engaging or more. So, that's where I stand. All right, let's check out the next one, and this is... Again, we're going a little Forgotten Realms here, but you can't really help it because it's what's being offered. So you can get over $300 of classic Dungeons & Dragons novels for $18 in this charity mega bundle. The newest Dungeons & Dragons Humble Bundle gets you 40 books from iconic authors like Ed Greenwood at a massive 94% discount. And look, when I started reading Dragonlance novels and sort of getting into fantasy as a kid, I had friends that, and even a girlfriend at the time, who pushed Forgotten Realms novels. I think it was like The Crystal Shard or something like that. Tried to push it on me and have me read it. But I was so engrossed in the Dragonlance setting that I was like, yeah, I'll get to it. And I just sort of put them aside and I never really revisited them. I even have one of the original Gary Gygax's Greyhawk novels, but I've just never read it because I have so many other books I want to read and so many other settings that I find so much more interesting than Greyhawk or Forgotten Realms. But I know that there's a huge fan base out there. And because this is a tabletop role-playing game channel, we are not going to be discriminating. We need to celebrate the entire hobby. So the novels are a huge part of that hobby. So again, let's go over this. When Dungeons & Dragons fans worldwide have been rolling dice and taking names in the same fantasy world for nearly 40 years, that world tends to start accumulating novels faster than a min-maxed barb, I think they mean bard, picks up combat XP. So it is with Ed Greenwood's Forgotten Realms. Not only has it been Dungeons & Dragons' de facto primary game setting for decades, tons of authors, especially Greenwood himself, have penned full-length books in that time, and this new Humble Bundle is your chance to get 40 of them for just $18. That works out to about 45 cents per book, you guys. If Forgotten Realms lore value is what you're after, the bundle wipes the floor with the official 2024 edition D&D 5e books. Heck, $18 would only buy you 230 pages of Wizards' 384-page Player's Handbook. The amount of Dungeons & Dragons per dollar here is off the charts. Okay, that comparison was mostly just for fun. These core rulebooks are needed to play the game. While these are ebook fantasy novels, some of them published well over 20 years ago. But if you're enchanted by the overall fantasy aesthetic and iconic characters of Dungeons & Dragons' most famous setting, this bundle is chock full of books that'll take you deeper into it. We've got 5 Ed Greenwood's Elminster novels following the titular long-bearded wizard Elminster Almond. He's not just a compelling bit part in Balders Gate 3, you know. He's been there and done stuff. 2001's Elminster in Hell particularly appeals to me. Partly because the Forgotten Realms 9 Hells are as fantastic as they are absurd, but mostly because I want to see how a wizard Gandalf type makes it through. Probably better than my Descent into Avernus character anyway. It'll also help me decide how I have to answer on Elminster in our D&D Wizards Smash or Pass video. It's not just the Forgotten Realms creator's own novels in there, though. Ed Greenwood's Monster Milk world building may be compelling, but other top authors are available. The bundle packs a variety of titles, among others, prolific Forgotten Realms writer and keen fencer Richard Lee Byers, former WotC editor and Scribe Award winner Aaron M. Evans, and gamebook specialist and former Vancouver Courier journalist Lisa Smedman. Of course, as this is a humble bundle, a share of the cash spent on it will go to a good cause. This time it's First Book, a Washington, D.C. charity founded in 1992, whose mission is to ensure every child has access to a quality education, regardless of background or zip code. If you're like Wargamer, your physical bookshelves are already heaving with tabletop rulebooks, source books, and novel tie-ins. But there's really no excuse not to jump in on 40 Dungeons & Dragons ebooks for the price of a pizza, especially when you're chipping in to buy books for underprivileged kids at the same time. If you do go for it and want to share your book report on one of these classic novels, or just fancy yammering with fellow nerds about all the things that's tabletop, Come join the free Wargamer Discord community. Plus, for a weekly rundown on our biggest and best articles, including deals. Okay, so they just go in self-promotion. So let's take a look at this Humble Bundle and see what kind. We've got R.A. Salvatore. Oh, wait, that's not R.A. Salvatore. That's Richard Lee Byers. Are there any Salvatore novels? Because I figure you would have led with that if there are. And I'm not seeing any. Maybe that's why. Interesting. I'm not even seeing the old school ones that were foisted on me at all. Huh. Let's go to the highest. Yeah, that's it. There's no Drizzt. Interesting. All right. Well, have you guys read any of these novels? Are any of them worth the read? I mean, you can just go to humblebundle.com and check their book listings, and you'll find this entire collection. It looks really good. You know, like it's a huge discount for a lot of books. So that's great. Hey, Nick Nack, how you doing, man? However, there is also a Call of Cthulhu Humble Bundle. Oh, is it not here anymore? Did they change it? Oh, here it is. So if you like Call of Cthulhu, you can get a ton of those TTRPG books for a very low price, starting at $5 for a couple of them, $15 for a whole bunch, and $30 for all of them. So it's definitely something that you should check out. And even if you don't play Call of Cthulhu TTRPG, it is something that's really nice for ideation on other system storylines. And just if you love H.P. Lovecraft lore, it has a whole bunch of really great content in here, you know? So, I don't know. I think it's totally worth the money. I've already picked this one up, so I'm not going to go into that one. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about this Humble Bundle with these Forgotten Realms novels. And if you have a favorite Forgotten Realm novel, what is it? Let me know in the comments. You read the Drizzt books till 2001. Nice. Read Making of a Mage many years ago before you found out that it's been heavily truncated by wizards. Oh, really? I did not know that. All right, let's go to the next article here. We're halfway through. And this is an opinion article about the best horror tabletop role-playing games. And I always love these types of things because I like hearing what other people have to say about tabletop role-playing games, but also I'm a huge horror fan. And so I really, like some of these I've never heard of. And that's really nice that it's some of the best tabletop games in horror. That just tells me I need to go check it out. And I always err on the side of checking out Drive-Thru-RPG because they have sales there and it's got PDFs of so many really great TTRPGs. All right. The most famous tabletop role-playing game, often referred to as TTRPGs, so ubiquitous to the genre and it overshadows others in almost every conversation, is Dungeons & Dragons, with players nowadays usually diving into its 5th edition. However, the high fantasy D&D offers is just one of many kinds of narrative tabletop RPGs can tell. And with Halloween coming up soon, when was this published? October last year. Well, hopefully the 5 are still good. I guess we'll find out. The time is never better to look into some spookier alternatives. Running a horror game with friends quickly becomes a comedy. Watching friends get themselves killed in stupid ways will always be funny, as long as it's not real. With a wide variety of horror games available, each geared toward a different experience, here are some of the best horror-themed RPGs. Number 5, Vaesen. I have only had the pleasure of playing this game once, but it was a very good time for everyone involved. Like many horror tabletop RPGs, Vaesen has a focus on investigative horror, straying away from combat and more towards solving a mystery. It makes itself distinct with a unique setting of industrial Scandinavia, pitting the new innovations of humanity against the Vaesen, magical creatures like fairies and mermaids and werewolves. The player's job isn't necessarily to fight against these Vaesen, as the creatures aren't strictly evil and most are exceedingly difficult to kill. Players are instead intended to investigate the situation, typically a conflict between Vaesen and humans, and often perform some kind of ritual to sate or banish the Vaesen. For a horror game, most of which are typically light on character customization due to the high lethality, Vaesen has quite robust character creation. While it has a rather small bestiary in the base book, every monster is given a generous amount of interesting flavor and mechanics. That's interesting. I really like that. What it reminds me of is the Hellraiser comic series. I'm trying to think of the studio that put the ones I'm talking about out, and I can't remember. But basically, you end up with a group of people who are trying to stop Pinhead, the Hell Priest. And they all get, no, it wasn't, they did a series, but it was a different series I'm thinking of. But in any case, I've read it on my Eviliv YouTube channel, done like live reads of all the comic series, and it's really good. But that's what it reminds me of. And that's sort of the vein of my own Eva Malum campaign setting, where you're mortals dealing with monsters and angels and demons and extra dimensional beings and all sorts of stuff like that in a very sort of modern world like we have today, where there's just levels of understanding. So, inspired by stuff like X-Files, where you have that monster episodes, and aliens and stuff. I really love that type of storytelling where you're just stepping into a bigger world and realizing, oh shit, some of those ancient secret societies are real. Some of that information should stay hidden, and some people are trying to uncover it. And if they're successful, what will happen? We need to stop them. We need to find a way of standing up against these monstrosities or powerful, beings or whatever. I love that stuff. So this Vaesen sounds right up my alley as well. All right, the next one is Kids on Bikes. I have heard of this. I haven't actually looked into it yet. While not strictly a horror RPG, I personally believe the rules and suggested setting for the game best lends itself to small-town horror. Kids on Bikes takes clear inspiration from the 80s movies like E.T. or The Lost Boys. The system is built to be a uniquely collaborative experience, while the players and the game master work together to build a town where all the characters live. Players also don't have to play as kids. There are rules for all ages, and I think the system works best when trying to emulate the Stranger Things feel with a wide variety of characters. Kids on Bikes lacks a robust combat system and is far more focused on building characters and a world together. This can be a pleasant break from D&D, which is a primarily combat-based game, or other horror RPGs where lives are cut short constantly from fights that shouldn't have been picked, like number 3 on the list. All right, number 3, Morkborg. More in line with a traditional fantasy game, Morkborg is easily the deadliest RPG on the list, perhaps the deadliest I've ever played. It takes place in a doomed dark fantasy world inhabited by terrifying monsters and paper-thin protagonists. Characters have hit points in the single digits and instantly die if these hit points fall into the negatives. This is not a game for month-long character arcs. This is a game of constant death and tragedy, which makes it a pretty solid horror game. Morkborg supplements have been created for a massive number of genres. Most of the Morkborg I've played have been with Pirateborg, which is a more nautical spin on the original. The general mechanics are similar, with additional rules added for firearms and boats. Surprisingly, my group hasn't had a hero die yet, but if my character had taken just one additional damage in the second fight, she would have. Morkborg is one that I've had friends who play it, and I've just never really got into looking into it. Knowing that it's a dark fantasy RPG and it's very, very difficult, that's pretty much up my alley. I like that stuff. Number 2, I've never heard of, Liminal Horror. This has become my go-to game for one-shots. Campaigns that last only one game session. First, the PDF of the basic rules is free on itch.io. The rules are quite simple yet have a hidden depth, using a mere 4 base stats that each work as their own health bar. As the title suggests, liminal horror is focused on stories in liminal spaces, but the title also has a double meaning. The game focuses on how characters are changed by their encounters with horrors, with psychological damage making the characters physically and mentally stranger through the Fallout system. Liminal horror is an extremely versatile system, and it's remarkably easy for GMs to prepare while also being open to substantial customization. Its few rules make it easy to learn for new players, and I personally think it makes a very strong introductory RPG for this reason. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really interested in that one. And last on the list is that oldie but goodie Call of Cthulhu. Call of Cthulhu is arguably the most iconic horror tabletop RPG. Directly based on the works of H.P. Lovecraft and his peers, this cosmic horror game is a step more complicated than the others on this list, primarily due to an expansive skill system and unique sanity mechanics. These gameplay elements complement the aesthetics of cosmic horror as well. Competent, curious academics looking into something they shouldn't, and being driven mad because of it. Call of Cthulhu has an impressive bestiary, its own grimoire of occult spells, and a constant pressure of insanity and death that keeps the game from getting stale. Call of Cthulhu also has several interesting supplements, including my personal favorite, Pulp Cthulhu. This supplement provides rules to shift away from Lovecraft's hopeless world, making stronger characters more durable and less likely to go insane at catching the whiff of Shoggoth's deodorant. I also have found it relatively easy to adapt Call of Cthulhu's mechanics to other horror worlds, such as analog horror worlds like Vita Carnis. With that being said, this system is definitely best for Lovecraftian horror. Yeah, I actually don't like the Call of Cthulhu game system at all, but I like the game. For me, my favorite sort of game system that I would run horror games in would be In Nomine. My second favorite would be the World of Darkness storyteller game system. I'm not as big of a fan as the World of Darkness storytelling system, but it is catered to that aesthetic. And I'm shocked that that wasn't included in this at all. And there's another one called Shiver, a TTRPG called Shiver, which is solely based on horror. And I'm surprised that's not here either. So they must have either not enjoyed them or just not played them. But what's your favorite horror-based tabletop role-playing game? And it could even be something like Dungeons & Dragons, because quite frankly, any game system with a little bit of prep time can be played in any genre. You just have to, as a game master or dungeon master, do a little bit of planning ahead. I even created my own game system, and I've done an actual play of it on this channel called DL6. While it still needs work, it does cater very well to this idea of horror. And even the In Nomine game, I think, is perfect for horror with its 3 versions of powers, corporeal, celestial, and ethereal, and using different damage mechanics like celestial, mental, and physical. So anyway, let me know what your favorite horror game is, and have you played any of these? And of these, what's the ones you like the best? Let me know in the comments. All right, last but not least, an ad. Meet the indie tabletop RPG that fights fascism with fucking. I saw this headline and I had to read this article. All's Fair is a card-based tabletop role-playing game about love, regime, and resistance, all of which you'll explore by screwing each other's brains out. It's not surprising to see that many of this year's Zine Quest tabletop RPGs are concerned with resisting fascism. However, the annual crowdfunding initiative, which spotlights indie zines, features one RPG with a totally unique way of fighting far-right ideology by fucking each other like love-drunk idiots. This is Dylan Applian's All's Fair, a modified version of the playing card game War that tells a story of intimacy and connection in the face of fascism. Like many bedroom endeavors, this is a 2-player experience. One of you plays the soldier, a hot and capable arm for the regime, while the other is a clone, a beautiful nobody who lives and dies repeatedly at the regime's whim. Play primarily takes the form of dueling, which is absolutely a euphemism for doing the dirty. Why do they call it dirty? I've never understood why having sex is referred to as the dirty. And it must just be that sort of Abrahamic Victorian ideology of filthy, sinning or something like that. But there's nothing dirty about sex unless you make it dirty, in which case, all the better. But not in the way that they're referencing it. All right, so you'll each play a card, and the owner of the high card claims the pair. This initiates an intimate prompt that's linked to the winning card. When both cards played match the rank, love is put on pause and it's time for war. You must leave your lover's bed and resume your place as a cog in the wheel of the regime. The Backer's Kit also mentions a special rule for the Joker card. This introduces a new clone who is not supposed to exist at the same time as the current clone, but somehow does. The regime will not allow this. The rules descriptions given here are minimal, but my interest is already piqued. Players seem to roleplay as both tools and victims of oppression, and this simple back and forth has the potential to pose some big questions. As the crowdfunder says, how long can you stand by as tools for the regime? What happens when you can't take it anymore? All's Fair is being published by Elliot Davis, the designer behind the last year's tear-jerking zombie card game, The Time We Have. Based on my time testing that title, I'm expecting even more emotional gut punches. If you're looking for something lighter, though, the crowdfunder can provide. All's Fair is crowdfunding in partnership with another indie RPG published by Elliot Davis. Robin Eckberg's Rise Wizards is a slightly more whimsical affair. It turns a classic RPG night minigame, stacking your dice on top of each other, into a world-building tool. Each turn, you'll lift your existing tower and place a new layer beneath. Each die adds a new room to the structure, and you'll roll it to fetch new storytelling prompts. As your tower grows, you'll also scan the horizon, building a map of the fantasy land around you. Should your tower fall, where each of your rooms land will have effects on the land for generations. There's more room for silliness and typical fantasy antics here, especially if you're competing against other players for the highest, fanciest wizard tower. But there's still room to tell complex stories here about the nature of legacy and consequences. Want to talk more about tabletops? Okay, so they just sort of self-promote there. So, what do you think? It's basically the game War, which I think we all played, the card game War, as kids growing up. But it's framed around the idea of fucking. That's very, very interesting. It would be interesting to see how the mechanics explain that is about sex, and how you would then choose who is the fascist and who is the sex bot, slave, clone, and then what are the perks or setbacks of either of those? Are there any? There's got to be some reason to be one or the other, and there has to be some reference to sex for it to really sell that idea. So are they talking like positions? I mean, you have the Kama Sutra to get a whole bunch of examples for, or, is it just like acts? I don't know. I'm interested to see how it actually plays out. And if it's interesting, maybe I'll bring it to my wife. See what she wants to do with it. All right. Let me know. Does this scratch an itch for you? Is this something that sounds interesting at all? Fighting fascism with fucking? Let me know in the comments. All right. That's kind of all I had for today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this Eviliv Play news episode. Subscribe and ring the bell if you are, in fact, new to the channel. Don't forget to click the like button and comment to let others learn about this celebration of tabletop role-playing games in general. Thank you to creator patron Aaron Hardy and developer patrons Chris Androu and Sam Ruiz. And as always, remember that evil spelled backwards is live. So get out there and be evil.